guys, it's Thadya and this is my 2001 Integra the Crosser. So today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the lower ball joints. I think the ones on my car are pretty much done because every time I'm driving the car I can hear them clunking. As you can see, the car's already up on jack stands and the wheels are off. I think that you guys can handle those steps by yourselves. So let's get started. Now I'm going to show you how you can tell if your lower ball joints are worn out. Okay, so if you push up on the knuckle like this, and then you see that the lower ball joint has some play, it means that it's pretty much done, because brand new ball joints, they do not have any play at all. And I know that I have a extended ball joint, which is aftermarket performance part, and therefore they do not last as long as OEM, and so I pretty much know that I have to replace them a lot more often. So that's also something to keep in mind. If you have an aftermarket lower ball joint, you will need to replace them a lot more often than if you have OEM. So off to the next step. So the first thing you need to do is to take off the axle nut, and for that you're going to need an impact gun and an impact socket. In my case, because I have the 5-black conversion, I need a 36mm. For stock Integras, it will be 32mm. After you remove the axle nut, you're gonna have to remove this whole caliper assembly right here so that you can have access to remove the knuckle. And to do that, you're gonna need a ratchet, and on my car, a 17mm socket so that you can remove the 2 bolts that's back here. Here's the first one right here. I'm not sure if you can see. There's one up here, and there's another one down below. And then after that, you're going to need to remove these 2 10mm bolts so that you can get the brake line out of the way as well when you remove the knuckle. So let's get to it. Now that the caliper assembly is loose, it's time to remove these 2 10mm bolts so that you can also remove the brake line. So you're going to need a ratchet and a 10mm socket. So after removing the 2 10mm bolts to remove the brake line should now be long enough for you to set the caliper assembly on the ground. Hopefully you guys didn't jack up the car too high, because you never want the caliper assembly to be hanging off of the brake line just by itself, because it's going to weaken the brake lines and it's going to cause you issues later on in the future. I actually have the stainless steel brake lines, so it's a little bit stronger, but I would still not let the caliper assembly hang on the brake lines by itself. If your car is too high, use a bungee cord that you can hook up on this bracket right here, and just hook it up on around the car like this, and then just let the caliper assembly hang. But never hang the caliper assembly just on the brake lines. Now you can also take the rotor out too, so that you can get it out of the way. Now for the cotter pins. Okay, so there's 3 cotter pins for you to remove. First one's on the lower ball joint right here. Second one is on the upper control arm right here. And the third one is actually on the tie rod that's right here. So all you need is just pliers to get them out. So you're just going to use the pliers to bend the cotter pin so that you can maneuver it through the hole. Or that works. There we go. You can just do that so that you can pull the cotter pin out from the hole like that. So now that we've taken out the cotter pins, we're gonna need a 19mm socket to take this crown nut off, a 17 for this one, and finally another 17 for the tie rod. So after removing the 3 bolts, you're going to take the lower ball joint crown nut and then you're going to turn it upside down like this, and then you're going to thread it back up a few turns back onto the lower ball joint so that you can use the ball joint separator right here. Also, one thing to keep in mind is that if you have the JDM 5 conversion, that's the only time that the ball joint nut is actually going to be 19mm. OEM, I believe, is 17mm, and so the 3 nuts that you just removed should all be 17mm. So you're gonna thread the nut in a couple of turns just until the bottom of the lower ball joint is flush with the nut. So maybe about right there, so that it's one solid surface area right here. So to put on the separator, you're gonna put one end of the tool on the lower side of the ball joint and the other one right on top of the control arm, and then I'm gonna hand tighten it so that it stays in place. Okay, and then I'm going to use a 1-inch wrench to slowly turn this bolt right here so that I can separate the ball joint. So you're pretty much just turning this bolt until you hear that popping sound, which means that it's already, the ball joint has been separated from the control arm. And so from then on, you can just remove the separating tool and the crown nut. So now you're gonna do the same thing with the tie rod. You're going to use the nut and turn it a couple of turns until it makes it a flat, flush surface for the separating tool. And now you're going to use the wrench to give it a couple of turns so that you can pop it out. Okay, so after it pops out, this is what it's going to look like. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to use some rags to clean that up. And now the final one, I think it's gonna be a lot more difficult because there's not much space on top here when I actually put in the separating tool, but I'm gonna try anyways. So same thing for the top one, you're gonna use a nut and put in a couple of turns to make sure that it's flat. The ball joint like that, and then you're gonna slide in the separating tool like that. Do a couple of turns. There we go. That's the popping that we want to hear. And now you're going to take the tie rod out like this.
Yeah.
Take it out from the axle, and there you have it. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned. Bye!